Welcome back. The House Homeland Security Committee holding its second impeachment hearing into the Department of Homeland Security Committee Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas today for potential impeachment. They're focusing on the victims of illegal migrant crime. The chairman of the committee, Mark Green, sending a letter to Mayorkas ahead of the hearing demanding that Mayorkas submit written testimony. Writing this, our request for written testimony from Secretary Mayorkas is his last chance to show some semblance of respect for the people's representatives and our constitutional oversight duties. Joining me now live here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland is Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts. Kevin, great to see you.
Thanks for having me. In
person for a change. Normally we are remote. Your reaction to the letter Mark Green sent and what will go down at this hearing today?
Well, Congressman Green, Chairman Green's done a great job on this, and God bless him for doing this. Obviously, the American people, as you know well, Maria, are ready for Mayorkas to be impeached and removed from office. This is what I expect from the administration, however. They've stonewalled this. They are responsible 100% for this crisis at the southern border. And ultimately, we have to hope that even with a thin majority, that the House Republicans are going to stick to their guns and actually impeach him, because that's what the American people are looking for.
But what does that mean when it gets to the Senate? Doesn't it die?
It does. But one thing that Republicans might want to keep in mind today on the issue of the border, on the issue of spending, is that they have the political will at their backs. And it's about time, speaking on behalf of millions of Americans, that Republicans spend some of that political capital. Chairman Green is exceedingly articulate on this issue. They need to sort of turn the tables on Chuck Schumer for once and put the pressure on him and his party, because they're the ones responsible for this.
It's incredible that we're not seeing any movement from the Democrats. You made the point during the commercial break with me that the Republicans in the House passed H.R. 2. It was the most important policy that they pushed forward, and yet you've got Karine Jean-Pierre saying that it's the Republicans' fault that the border is open.
One of the reasons that the press secretary gets away with that is because our friends, the conservatives in Congress, good men and women all, get skittish. At the very time that they need to be using this political will to advance the will of the American people, which is to close the border, to send H.R. 2 back to the Senate, they decide that they're going to get caught up in shutdown politics. We don't want a shutdown, but a shutdown is a lot less harmful to the American people than what continues to go on at the border every single minute as we sit here. Yeah. There are hundreds of illegal aliens crossing the border, as you know, Maria. It's time for Republicans in D.C. to actually grow a spine and push this back to the Senate and put the political pressure on them.
Senator Mike Lee was with me Sunday. He said, look, shut down the border or shut down government. These are clear choices. Meanwhile, there are reports that President Biden said that he is ready to change course on border policy. That high-stakes meeting with lawmakers yesterday at the White House resulted in that comment on border and Ukraine funding. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer right after that meeting. Watch this.
We understand that there's concern about the safety, security, sovereignty of Ukraine. But the American people have those same concerns about our own domestic sovereignty and our safety and our security. We must insist that the border be the top priority. I think we have some consensus around that table. Everyone understands the urgency of that.
There's a large amount of agreement around the table that we must do Ukraine and we must do border. There was tremendous focus on Ukraine and an understanding that if we don't come to Ukraine's aid, that the consequences for America around the globe would be nothing short of devastating.
And here we are. A partial government shutdown is at hand tomorrow if things don't change. The Senate expected to vote on that stopgap spending bill this afternoon. If it passes the House, it'll take up the bill on Friday. How do you see this playing out?
Well, first, if I may, let me say, just observe that Chuck Schumer spent 20 times as many words on Ukraine than on the border. It tells you everything you need to know. Nothing against Ukraine, but the American people want to fix the border first. And that's hopefully a good segue into your great question about the shutdown politics. There's going to be a shutdown in all likelihood. And guess what? We will wake up the next morning and the sun will be shining and freedom will still exist. We don't want to shut down as conservatives, but ultimately, until we shut down the southern border, Republicans, both in the House and Senate, need to be very comfortable with shutdown politics in Washington.
You're speaking on a panel here later today. That panel is called What to Expect from a Possible Republican Administration. Obviously, President Trump's priority has been the border. What do you expect if we were to see that change in November?
Well, it would be a great change, first of all, but as I will mention this afternoon, with all due respect to people attending here, the next president, in this case, is in your hypothesis, President Trump needs to make a list of all of the ideas that have ever been uttered at the World Economic Forum and oppose them all. from making China a friend rather than a #1 adversary to assuming that migration and open borders is somehow good for freedom. I'm expecting the next conservative president, whoever he or she may be, to come out both barrels blazing on behalf of the American people, dismantling the administrative state for the sake of self-governance.
So you're talking about some of the things being said here. Look, President Trump is clear with America First policy. That's not playing well, you're saying, with folks here.
Surprisingly, it isn't. And yet, there are 4 or 5 of us who've been invited here out of a few thousand who actually understand that America First policies are right. Not just for Americans, but for non-Americans as well, because when Americans are at their apex of freedom, their apex of prosperity, as you cover so well, Maria, the rest of the world really benefits. I expect the next conservative president to be very candid about those things, collaborate where needed, but ultimately it's going to be starting with America First policies.
You think Joe Biden will be the nominee on the Democrat side?
I don't. I think the president will be deposed by the summer convention.
You think he'll be deposed? He won't be the candidate. Who will be the candidate?
One of the governors, either Newsom of California, maybe Shapiro of Pennsylvania. But as I've told all the Republican candidates, including Mr. Trump, if you're not preparing for the general election to run against someone other than Joe Biden, you're not playing the 3D chess that the Democrats always play.
That's a very good point. Kevin, great to talk with you this morning.
Good to be here.
Thanks so much. Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation.